My man, I know I say I love a lot of episodes, but I really, really enjoyed this conversation with Matt. Matt is the husband of a good friend of my wife that she used to teach with, Megan. And we went on a hike recently, and he was just kind of telling me about some of the things he was doing. And I'm like, dude, this guy's a ninja. But I think when I said this guy's a ninja, I was like, my ninja assessment was not quite the ninja level that he is. This
You need
dude,
you need to work on your ninja
I
assessment a little
need
bit
to work
more.
on my ninja-ness, man, because my recognizing ninja skills, I vastly underestimated just how amazing, not only of a human being, but just the things that he's doing, the intentionality behind what he does. And so in this podcast, we talked about some of these things, right? We talked about not only the importance of being a father, being present, doing youth coaching and all those things, but also how you live out, no kidding, how you live out your faith, right? The power of a handshake and not only the power of a handshake, but the intentionality of a handshake, which then leads to global impact type stuff. And so I just really not only was fascinated with, but just love Matt's heart, and the conversation was just pure joy. It was one of the most fun podcasts that we've done.
So good, man. I'm gonna leave this question to start the listening of this conversation, and it's coming from his TED Talk. He says, "What if curiosity and uncertainty are the most underrated heroes of the human condition?"
Hmm.
Think about that. Go listen to it, and then go take action on what we tell you to do. Do it
Because we said to do it.
because we
Giddy
said to
up,
do it.
go.
No, no, no. Matt said to do it.
Matt said to do it.
Bye.
See ya. You're listening to Filling the Storehouse podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Stuart, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living the abundant life through faith, family, and freedom. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours. Together, achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to intentionally fill our storehouse.
Hey, David, I'm going to start the conversation with you were telling Matt here to get closer to the mic. And when he does that, he kind of hides his face. Can we do the same thing for you and just like you fully hide your face by your microphone? Like go like just put the microphone
Well,
right in
I
front of your
can.
face in front of
I,
the
I,
camera.
I can. But really the point was that Mike, that Matt closer to the mic, it really accentuates his deep, beautiful voice, which is something that, you just, that's not a problem that you have, right? So actually, if you could do us a favor, Stu, and move as far back from your mic as possible so that we don't have to hear you, but also adjust it so it can hide your face, that would be like the best of both worlds for us.
Matt, can you give us this deep voice of yours?
Matt,
Yeah, it's
welcome.
good to be with
Welcome.
you guys. It's really good. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, listeners. I'm here for you. I'm here for you with all of the deepest decibels of my voice. It's good to be with you too. Thanks for having me.
It sounds like the late night radio show.
Yeah.
And what was it
Here's a
you
funny anecdote that I would never share on a podcast anywhere, but I don't know why I'm going to say it right now. I helped a guy in college. I helped with a radio show, and I had a radio name. My name was Lars Larson on the radio show, and it was like a death metal radio show. I did not like death metal, but he did, and he invited me to be on his radio show. And I was like, "Yeah, a microphone and like nobody listening. Sign me up for that, man." We had a blast.
That's awesome. I love
We'll
that.
we'll we'll name
Hey,
this podcast episode featuring Lars Larson.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to
That's
make a
good.
comeback.
Yeah. Well, Matt, for our listeners, if you could, hey, just give us a little background about who you are and what you do.
I love that. Thanks, Stu. I am in love with my wife. Let's start there. Her name is Megan. She and I have had just an incredible life that we've built together. We've got two wonderful, brilliant, beautiful daughters, 14 and 11, both in middle school. The oldest about to head to high school next year. I love that, and it's the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my life, and it's very much what defines me. Yeah, I got a lot of career stuff I can talk about. I like to think about. You guys actually had a podcast episode not too long ago about identity, and it's got me thinking a little bit about how should I introduce myself, right? So I want to start with saying I'm in love with my wife. Number one, because I think not a lot of men say out loud as often as they should, that they love the people that they love. And I've got friends that I love. I've got close family that I'm so grateful to have. And I've got work that I love too. Here's another weird thing that I love. Not weird, just a part that wouldn't make my bio. I'm a youth sports coach, you guys. Like, I've found a weird calling to help recreational level youth kids play softball and soccer. I love it because I love it because I love the sports and I grew up playing sports and that's fun. But I love it because two things. Number one, most of youth sports culture is so toxic and teaches these kids such terrible things that our teams make a commitment. I make our parents, the parents of the kids that I coach, I make them make a commitment that we will be the absolute example of sportsmanship and of loving each other and uplifting each other on the field. And I love doing that. But the other reason I love this is that and these kids, and I coach girls soccer and softball, they need somebody to tell them that they're great human beings, that they are magnificent, that they are wonderful and loved. And I am not afraid to say those things out loud to those kids. And I think, I mean, I guess I teach them sports along the way, but man, filling those kids with the stuff that they're often too empty of because of the world around them. There's nothing more important I could do with my afternoons. I'll tell you that much for sure. And I got some work stuff that I do. My entire career has been focused on human connection and groups. It started for the last 21 years. I've built a company called Fired Up and Technify. Fired Up is a company that helps college fraternities and sororities grow. It's a weird little niche industry that I spent a large portion of my career in and loved. I don't work in it very actively anymore, but still own the company and still get to care for and love on the people that do the work every day. It's wonderful work. It Fired Up. I've built some other brands along the way, the Social Excellence Project, under which I've done a lot of work just teaching people how to build meaningful human connection. I think in a lot of ways that you guys are doing too. And I've got a new venture, a couple new ventures, but the one that I'm actively working on today is sort of a faith-based. It lives at the intersection of faith, your faith, whatever faith you've got, however you understand faith. It lives at the intersection of faith and human connection. And that project is called Between, and it's all about helping people build more moments of sacred human connection in their lives. So that was a long answer to your simple question, Stu. I appreciate it.
I love it, dude. I absolutely love it.
So many gems just in the intro. I just want to take one thing to acknowledge real quick as well. And I think sometimes we miss the importance of, especially as men, coaching youth sports. Youth sports? I don't know what youth sports are, but youth sports are important. And I'll tell you, sometimes, and I think we lose this, but sometimes we are the only male example that these children have, and we have an opportunity, a huge opportunity, to model what not only sportsmanship and all those things that are highly important, and teaching respect and those things, but like you said, love, man. Like, we may be the only source, because we don't know these kids what they face at home, but I can guarantee you that there's so many children that don't have that male role model. And I'll tell you, I've been coaching football, and my dream, my desire, my passion is that when some of these young dudes and dudettes look back, that we're the coaches that have those impact that coaches had on us, right? Like, there's some coaches that were just like, man, that dude poured into me. He loved me. Coach Denny, awesome guy. God rest his soul. But I'll remember him forever because he poured in, right? And I had good parents, but he poured in a different way. It wasn't influence. And so, man, I just want to acknowledge you in that too, because some of those girls may never get told they're loved, right? Some of them may never be acknowledged. Some of them may never feel more than, and dude, it's such an awesome responsibility that I encourage all of our listeners, dudes and dudettes, to if you have an opportunity, and make sure you're prepared. I have to prepare myself because sometimes the competitive spirit, can get in the way of that love. But preparing yourself to be in that moment and to recognize the enduring impact that you can make on these kids' life through sports, which is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, man. I had a kid recently. I was telling sort of a anecdote I was trying to teach him a lesson. I don't know what a lesson I was trying to teach him, but I was like, hey, when I was growing up, my dad would always ask me after games, he'd always ask me, how do you think you did? And I'd say, sometimes I'd say, I don't think I did very well. I made that error, or I did whatever. And he'd always say, okay, well, I'm proud of you as long as you tried your hardest. And then, I said that to the kids that they were standing around in a little circle, and I had probably four of the girls be like all audibly, were like, what? Your dad would say that to you? Your dad wouldn't tell you like, do better, or like, you got to bend your knees more. You got to work through the ball. Your dad wouldn't give you like, what? Like, they were audibly shocked that my dad would just say, okay, as long as you tried your best. I guess I was trying to teach them that trying their best was the most important thing, right? But to me, that was one of so many reminders I've gotten that these kids literally don't have people in their lives. They got parents who are trying their best, man. They're trying their best, but those parents didn't have parents who said, as long as you tried your best, you know what I mean? We have these deep, broken things that we bring with us to parenthood. And then if we bring them to coaching, or we bring them to the sidelines as fans, we just start to reinforce all these broken things. And so, yeah, being a voice, even a voice, maybe these kids won't remember my name. These kids won't remember, they may tell stories about me that Coach Matt, changed their life. But I hope somewhere deep in their soul, they'll have a little mark that I left that reminds them that they're loved, and reminds them that it's okay that they made an error, and that reminds them that, winning wasn't everything, that they're, as it turns out, loving the people on your team might have been the win that we were going for all along. So anyway, I could talk about this all day, David.
That's beautiful, man. And to be clear, I tell my kids that the only important thing is to win, right? Like, I love them.
Yeah, right. That's
as long as they win.
Right?
It's like, it's conditional, right? As long as you win, I love you very much.
Yeah. So that's... I only gave that speech after they held the championship trophy.
That's good. That's great timing.
Matt, I'm curious, like, so I've started coaching my kids. My son's doing baseball right now. I'm coaching he's 5. So we're doing coach pitch baseball for the first time. And I tell you what, man, I get nervous. Like, and I like prepare like the practice ahead of time. And I get nervous. And like after the games, I am worn out. And it's an hour and a half, but like I come home and I'm like crashing on the couch, like dead tired. And my wife's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you so tired? I'm like, I'm exhausted. I don't know why I'm so tired, but like it wears me out. I think it's just my emotional like energy that I put towards it.
Stu, there is nothing more stressful in my life than coaching girls softball, 11-year-old girls playing softball. Nothing.
Yeah.
And except if I rewind to when my kids were 5 and I was trying to teach them baseball. Baseball is like the most complicated sport on the face of the planet. And you give these little 5-year-old kids weapons. Like, here, take this bat. Don't hit the kid next to you standing in a helmet, even though it looks like a good target, and try to pay attention to everything else. It is so complicated. And yes, Stu, it is, so utterly exhausted after a Saturday. Man, wait till you get tournament Saturdays where you played 6 games. You got there at 6:30 a.m. You got home at 10 p.m. and you just been on the field all day. Everything just hurts.
Baking in the sun.
Oh gosh. And it is so emotionally exhausting. All right. Yeah.
Well, and to David's point, David, I don't know if you had a question lined up, but to your point, and we've had some conversations on our podcast about just men stepping up and being a part of children's lives. And, we had Susan Peters. You were talking about Susan Peters and Unbound Now. And she had said on that podcast that if men would just step up and show love and appreciation and ask questions and be curious and some of the stuff that you're promoting too, like how much of a difference that could make in children's lives. And there's evidence right now that says that 1 in 4 children live in fatherless homes. And like, how much could we impact the world by men stepping up and being the coach of a soccer team, or volunteering at the school and, doing spelling tests, or Goody, you're going to go do, security at the school, or go volunteer at the church, or like whatever that is.
Wow. Let's be honest. it's called Watchdogs, but I'm really going to play at recess and do PE time with the kids. Like that's really what.
But
But
still,
my
dude,
kids are fired up,
how
dude.
much do your kids love
Like
it?
Noah's crying, right? He was crying today because he thought it was today, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no, dude, it's in 2 sleeps, and he was like, he was crushed because he thought today was the day, and so you can see the impact, right? You can
Yeah.
see it.
David, real talk. I did that volunteer dad program at our kids' elementary school. I sat in a lunchroom. First of all, it is not security. So Stu, do not give him. I mean, that's a nice way to make men feel better. It is just playing on the playground. It is you are playing monkey
That's
on
it.
the ground. If you don't know that game, you will learn it very quickly on the playground. That is what you do. I'm an alum of I'm done with elementary school, but I did it all of that for both my daughters. And anyway, real talk. I sat at a lunchroom table one time when I was volunteering as a quote unquote watchdog dad. And I had a little girl sit next to me, and she just said out loud, I mean, kids will say anything, right? She just said out loud, "I wish my dad was like you. I wish my dad would come to my school."
Dude.
I mean, she just said it. Like, I wish I had a dad like you. And that broke my heart, man, broke my heart. But the amount of those little comments that I've accumulated over the years, coaching and volunteering with kids, like they don't have, and I want to say very clearly, I don't blame the dads. I really don't. I mean, the definition of success for men in America right now typically doesn't include meaningful, heartfelt conversations with kids who aren't related to you. It typically doesn't include building new friendships that aren't related to your work. It typically doesn't include telling somebody who isn't immediately related to you, like your mother or your wife, that you love them. It typically doesn't include those things. And if that's not success, and they're being told, pushed to be successful, hustle, push, be successful, go, man, where do you fit that in? Where do you learn it? Where do you practice it? Where do you get good at it? I was really blessed to have some of that around me, maybe growing up. And I think around me as I matured as a young man, I was really lucky to have some access to that. But I don't think most guys do. I don't blame dads. I want more for them, but I don't blame them. I don't shame them. Man, I think they're trying. They just, they haven't had practice. They haven't had guidance. I think that's what you guys do, right? I mean, I think your Storehouse 310 stuff, your mastermind stuff, the retreats that you do are about inviting men into new levels of that kind of connection with other people and with themselves.
Yeah, man, that's beautifully put. Because, and I couldn't agree with you more. I don't blame the men at all. I desire something better for them, and I've experienced something better. And I'll tell you, it's, one of the big things we talk about is redefining success, right? Like, okay, let's look at what it really means. And a lot of the dads don't know their kids are saying that. I've had the same experience. And it's not that the kid knows me. They don't know that they really want me as a dad because they have no idea what kind of dad I am. I could be a terrible dad. What they know is that in the moment, I'm present. In the moment, I am the seat next to them. And there's a hunger, there's a hole in our hearts for our dads too, especially if they're grinding and hustling. But I don't want to let men off the hook, because once you do know, and I will tell you, if you're not doing those things, there are other men that are, and your kids do feel that way. And so I don't want to let anybody off the hook either, because once you do know, now if the ball is in your court to take action, because life is all about action. It's not about, I always tell my kids, they hate it, and it's my favorite. I love telling them this. I'm like, hey guys, you can want in one hand, or you could talk about in one hand, and you can poop in the other. Tell me which one fills up first. Like it is like, but the favorite thing that I tell my kids, because in all reality, it's just an action. It's an action-based an equation, right? You poop in a hand or you want in one, right? And you know which one fills up first. And so, but to your point, I don't want to shame, but I want us all to be accountable for what is better, right? What is better and what it looks like. And I'll tell you, especially with the young ones, man. No, I shouldn't say that. It manifests differently, but I recently went to lunch just to have lunch with Noah. He's my kindergartner. And dude, like they're all telling you, like, it just, you just attract the kids. It just is what happens. They come around you. We went to recess after lunch, dude. I think I got 10 million steps in because they're all like, hey, we just like, let's play tag or whatever. But what it really turns into is I'm running around the playground and there's just a whole gaggle of ankle biters following, right? Like this cloud of
Yes.
kindergartners running around. And then the other ones are like, hey, can I play with you too? I'm like, dude, I don't even know what we're playing, but of course you can play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just we're just running in circles at this point. And they're like, yes, let's do that. I'm like, okay, cool. Just start running.
Yeah,
So
Dave.
it's the presence part, right?
Yes, man. I want for everybody on earth to see a video of you, and I've had the exact same experience playing on a playground, because it is a metaphor for the need that kids have. A man shows up who is kind and fun and willing to interact in the way, willing to enter into a kid's world, like literally be in their playground world. It is like a magnet. It is like, mosquitoes to one of those things that kills mosquitoes, but you love on them instead. That was a bad metaphor, but it is wild to watch. I've felt that before, man.
Yeah.
It, for real, like that sounds like a silly little passing story. No, that is like a metaphor for the need that kids have. They will just absolutely be magnetically attracted to that man who shows up lovingly. And and because we can only assume that they don't have enough of that in their life right now.
Well, before my first question, I also want to highlight it for the dads out there, or just dudes that want to be engaged, because I did this as a single guy before I was married in a church context, and it was awesome. But it's also extremely fulfilling in a very selfish way. In a very selfish way, I leave the playground with a huge smile on my face, joy in my heart, and there's a very selfish side to the level of fulfillment that I have in my life based on those experiences as well, right? It's an amazing thing, whether it's coaching, and the little guys, man, because they have no filter, so they just love on you, and it's amazing. So there's a lot of selfishness in that as well, but I think we'll move on to something I really want to talk about as well, and that's, so you did a TED Talk. We'll put it in the show notes. It was 9 minutes. It was awesome. And you did the entire thing in questions. I even like started rewinding. I'm like, oh man, there's got to be one point where it's not fully question form. The entire thing is done in questions, but it really resonated because this idea, our kinetic life circle and the things we go through, it all starts with reflection and questions to really challenge our opinions, our presuppositions, all these different things that we've created, and it changes everything. And it's so powerful. And so I'm just curious, one, how long did it take you to practice that? Were you reading some kind of script? Because it was incredible. You never tripped up once from asking questions. And two, like what prompted that topic? What brought so much passion out of you for the topic of curiosity and questioning?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've been a professional speaker for however many years, a long time, decades. And that 9-minute TED Talk, actually, I've done 2 TED Talks, both about 9 minutes. I mean, by far the most difficult thing I've ever done as a speaker. Now, that I take that back. Those were the 3rd and 4th most difficult things I've ever done as a speaker. By far, the most difficult thing I've ever done as a speaker is give my grandfather's eulogy. My father, my hero, my grandfather, just my hero growing up, somebody who loved me in a gentle way as a man and showed me an example of what it means to be a gentle man. Second most difficult thing for me was officiating my sister's wedding. It wasn't difficult. It was just a high stakes game. And what an honor to get to do that, to have your sister ask you to do that. It was a wonderful gift in my life. And then those 2 TED Talks, because I had to memorize them, because I had to stay tight in a timeline, because that is not how I normally speak. I normally speak like this, where I'm just making stuff up and trying to get a laugh and then trying to make a point every once in a while, right? Like that has always been my go-to. So those things were That was difficult. And that question one entirely in question form about the concepts of curiosity and uncertainty was really a challenge. And I think it's a challenge for a lot of people to actually ask more questions than give answers. And I think that was my point, right? I wanted to make the point in both content and form of the presentation. I wanted to show that questions you can live in questions entirely, at least for 9 minutes, or at least a little more than we normally do. I think that was maybe the point of the TED Talk. Man, I think so much of the world around us tells us that we have to be certain, tells us that we have to have an answer and be committed to that answer forever. And listen, I think there are some things in your life that you should probably be certain about. Your values, specifically, how much you choose to love in your life, right? I think there are some pillars, some foundational pillars that the more certain you are about those, the more uncertain you can allow yourself to be about everything else. And that's been the permission that I've given myself that has allowed me to grow and develop most as a man, as a human, as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, as a husband and father. The more if I'm firm in my values, if I'm firm in that, but wildly uncertain, deeply curious, I mean, just full of questions about pretty much everything else, it transforms the way you experience the world, and it allows you to keep growing. I think so many people are so decided, were told at some point that they had to know an answer, whether it's about faith or whether it's about their political ideology or pick a thing, right? And everybody thinks, well, I've got an opinion on that. In fact, we've got a whole industry of news media and even like sports broadcasters and Twitter, like literally everything is about what's your hot take, give your hot take, show us that you're certain and prove it. Boom. In fact, the entire academic experience growing up is tell us the right answer and then prove it's the right answer. And then any of us who live in the real world realize that that's all BS, man. Like all of it is, because there are 8 billion people on the planet, each with their own lived experience, each with their own way of understanding the world, each with their own pains and suffering and longings and desires. And if we start to realize that the real wisdom, this is my take right now, but the real wisdom actually comes from being curious about their experience, being curious about their needs, being curious about their lives, man, maybe that's where we learn the real answers, by not looking, by not thinking that we have to figure them out, but just continually being curious, continually being uncertain. I get worked up about that particular area, mostly because I think certainty, or the need for certainty, is the thing causing the most damage in our society right now politically. I think it's the thing that is dividing us religiously and spiritually. I think it's making us scared to talk to our neighbors because, I think about the last election. I was literally afraid to talk to a couple of my neighbors because I knew we had dramatically different political views. And I was curious, and I would love to learn more. I would actually love to learn about their perspective, but I know that there's a world around them right now that is saying you are either right or you are wrong. Pick a team. And that just doesn't feel healthy. Not only healthy, it's damaging, and it's tearing apart society. It's tearing apart your town, your community, my cul-de-sac. I mean, there was. I think that stuff is just really, really challenging. And so I think once I realized that there are 8 billion people and they all have a different lived experience and they all see the world through different eyes. As soon as I realized that I can never see through their eyes except if I ask them, except if I'm curious about what their eyes see, then I could never actually know the world. right? If the world exists not just through my eyes, as it turns out, I'm not the hero of this movie, I'm not the star of the planet, then I probably need to be curious about everybody else. I'm just rambling now, man. You set me off. I appreciate that.
Well, and it's something else that you said that really stuck with me is just the idea of humility. And I think we have a humility problem right now too. And I screenshot the slide that you posted on the TED Talk, and it said, "Are you sure about that opinion you're about to blast out on social media right now? Right? Are you sure? Well, how about you just have a little humility and maybe look at it from a different lens before you go blasting somebody, right?" And I've growing up, I think we're all raised a certain way, right? And you all have a certain experience level and certain words and things that brought you up a certain way to start your belief system. But I think only in the past like couple of years where David and I have really kind of dug into this idea of reflection and being curious and asking more questions, that I've started to try and think outside the box and really actively pursue the opposite side of my belief system. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with my wife just recently, and we've been kind of talking about setting up like family trusts and like what do we do with like our estate planning and building our wealth and like how do we leave it for our kids and blah blah blah, and like it's a lot, right? Like hard questions. And it's caused some challenges and frustrations and hard conversations. And Dave and I were guests on a podcast just recently, and the host said, "Hey, I've been reading this book. It's called Die with Zero." And I was like, "Whoa, what's that about?" It's like, "Yeah, you just basically spend all your money before you die and don't leave anything to your kids." I was like, "Oh, that's different." Right. So I went and got it. And I'm reading it right now at the library. And my wife looked at it the other day. She's like, "What are you reading?" Like, Die with Zero. It's like, "We're not doing that." Like, well, I mean, why not? Let's just get a different viewpoint, right? And let's just think about it. And then, hey, maybe there's some good points in it. And there are some great points in it. And so it's like really opening up my mind to just think a little bit differently and like understand that your opinion is not always going to be the right one. I don't know, man. It's very, very interesting.
I'm struck by that, Stu. Like, it requires a level of self-confidence to access information that is diametrically opposed to whatever your current viewpoint is. Yeah. Humility requires confidence. Humility requires strength. Stu, what a great example, actually, right? You're having a deep family conversation. Like, you've got clarity to some extent about what's important to you, about legacy, about after you die. Like, is there a bigger question to answer with your spouse, right? Like, that is the deep in the woods. And you go out and you grab a book about the opposite opinion, right? Like the other view. It takes confidence and strength to have humility, to be uncertain. I really believe that.
Well, and what we've found to be really true and present in our lives just recently is once you start surrounding yourself with other people that may have different of opinions, but you trust each other, you understand that they may have a different opinion, and you all come together and you have meaningful conversations and you get different viewpoints and ideas, and they all come together. It's like your world just opens up tremendously, and before we hit the record button, we were talking about just how hard it is for men currently to have these deep, meaningful conversations, and our inability, to have these relationships. And now I'm curious why that is. Like, what's your opinion on, where we're heading and why we have such hard times with that?
Yeah, I think men. So I found a couple stats recently. These are just to maybe reinforce the point. 30 years ago, a majority of men had at least 6 close friends, right? 30 years ago, this is when I'm like, I don't know, basically in college, starting college. 30 years ago, men had at least 6 close friends. Today, that number has been cut in half. In fact, 15% of men have no close friends. Reported on this massive U.S. national survey, They have no close friends. The majority of men are not satisfied with their friendships. This is from the same study. And I thought this one was interesting. Only 1 in 5 men in the US reported that they had received emotional support from a friend in the last week. To me, those aren't surprising. Those are obvious. And there's a lot of people who've written really wonderful stuff on masculinity and manhood and men's generational problems, right? Of being able to build meaningful human connection. We're taught by our fathers, who are taught by their fathers, who are taught by their fathers, right? And it doesn't take long to go back to, go back 3 or 4 generations. And I mean, men having meaningful 3 men on a podcast having a meaningful conversation about manhood and saying love 15 times already and talking about strength and humility. Like what, whose fathers or grandfathers were having this conversation? I bet some, but not many. And we also know that there's, this is somebody else's work, not mine by far, but I've always loved that point that there are so many male relationships that are side by side and not face to face. You've probably heard that. You've read that before. I forget who talked about that, but that men so often relate while they're sitting next to each other at the bar staring at a screen, or while they're driving next to each other in a golf cart on the way down a golf course, or while they're sitting next to each other at a game watching we sit next to each other and never look each other in the eye, never turn and face each other. And women have historically been better at that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not the expert in that category. I do know that I've spent a long time working with college age men, working with college fraternities, which is a peculiar world, and a world that is full of really an exaggerated, it's sort of like a caricature of toxicity in men's culture, all like packed together in a really concentrated way with a bunch of guys in college who all live together, right? Like, I mean, you look at it real close. If you look at it from a distance, it looks like a bunch of idiots doing dumb things. But if you look at it really close, it looks like a bunch of people who are lonely and who found for the first time in their lives men who will talk to them about big stuff, about the important stuff of life. It looks like for the first time in their lives, friends who give them hugs and who say, I love you. It looks like for the first time in their lives, people who literally will say, I'll do anything for you. And then they'll put action behind it. I'm not a military guy, did not serve in the military. I know that's in both your backgrounds. And I got to believe that there's a similar thing. If I look from a distance at a group of young military recruits or a unit as they're getting to know each other, it probably doesn't look like the healthiest relationships in the world. But I bet if I look real close, there is a level of love and trust that is hard to find anywhere else on the planet. And so those things tell me that as we men then leave those highly concentrated spaces of gentlemen loving each other, caring for each other, lifting each other up, and we go out into a working world that is about hustle and competition. We go out into a working world that is about neighbors who live in boxes who never even wave to each other. That when we go out into this world here, it's no wonder that 15% of American men report having no close friends. We are desperate for it. Maybe we find it for a moment. We found it on a team, or we found it in a military unit, or we found it in a fraternity or a group that we were a part of at some point. And then it's really hard to find. And we're not trained at building it ourselves. We don't have that training in our background because our fathers and their fathers and their fathers before them didn't look at their friends in the eye. That's a little armchair quarterbacking here on masculinity. I don't know if that's if I'm anywhere close, but some of that feels real to me.
I think you're spot on.
I think you're excuse me. I think you're extremely accurate, and to complicate the matter, it's almost like society is, especially Western and especially American, quote unquote values of independence. And if I'm a man, if it's to be, it's all on me, and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And although we know these are all lies, right? We know these are all lies. We have almost been conditioned to pursue a life of loneliness, and that there's some kind of honor in that. And I'll tell you what's interesting is, as you were talking, I was thinking about, no kidding, my friends. And if I were to take that poll, I would say that my closest relationship with Stu, I'm dissatisfied in it, but not in a bad way, right? It's just because he's underwhelming. But I will say that there is, I think I can honestly say, no, I'm not think, I can honestly say emphatically that my happiness level is really high. And it has nothing to do with any kind of money, real estate, military retirement, like any of the jobs, the titles, any of those things. It has a ton to do with my presence with my family. And it has a ton, probably even rivaling that, to be, if I'm completely honest. I've never really assessed it, but this is how I feel in the moment. My friendships are so profound and they're deep, and I love these dudes in my life, that just like pours, that just waters my happiness garden, dude. And I'll tell you, it is a huge part of, because I also know, I feel security in knowing that if I go through something rough, I have all these options of dudes to reach out to as well, right? Like I have options for security. I have options for emotional outlets, for fun, for all these different things. And I don't feel lonely. And that's all very intentional. It's not to say something's wrong with somebody that doesn't, because it does require you to say hello. It does require you to step outside of these societal norms that we think are truth, and they're not. And it gets easier. So I want to encourage dudes too. Like it gets easy. Like there's nobody I won't walk up to and say hi to now. Like I have zero. And one of the things you said, Matt, earlier that I think is really critical, and I just heard it in a book this morning that I was listening to, and it was the idea of confidence and self-esteem. And the higher your confidence, so you're talking to Stu, telling him what an awesome trait. And I will just say that the higher your confidence in your self-esteem, the less you feel threatened by the world. So it actually is something that you're bringing positive, and it enables you to do things like say hello. It enables you to do things like say, man, my marriage is not where I want it to be. It's rough. What do you do about that? It enables you to say, man, I'm yelling at my kids. It opens the door to so much more depth, which is one of the slides that you put up too, depth in your questions. That it potentially changes your life, and it changes it very, very quickly, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. David, you saying that you've got rich, meaningful friendships, I think that does give people hope. And it's important to say that out loud to men. I think it's also important to say, I've gone through seasons of my adult life where I didn't, or I'll bet there are men listening to this right now. There are people listening to this right now who would relate. All of my friendships were work-related friendships. There was a significant period of my adult life. And as an entrepreneur, and I'll bet there are entrepreneurs out there listening, we got a bad habit of recruiting all of our friends to work for us. I've done that, and it hasn't always turned out well. In fact, multiple times it's turned out bad. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It becomes difficult when we blend those worlds. It is both beautiful and really complicated. I'm really blessed right now to know that I've got non-work male friendships in my life that are meaningful and real, and people that I can turn to, and people that I can call best friends, in ways that there are points in my life where I just didn't. And those points were lonely, because those points, once you don't have those relationships outside of work, pretty soon you don't have an identity outside of work. Pretty soon you are only your job. And so now you get a bad quarter at the office. That P&L, that quarterly P&L starts to tell your life story in a way that is really uncomfortable. And Not true, of course, but it feels that way. It feels that way. Our relationships, humans are social animals. We are, from the moment we're born, we are constantly and instinctively seeking one thing. We're seeking human connection, right? And so a large part of our identity is actually formed through those relationships that we have or don't have, which is why I've built most of my career around the importance of helping people build more of those meaningful relationships, be better at things like you were saying, Dave, saying hi to people confidently, because as it turns out, not only do you need it, but they need it, man. Like that person at the coffee shop that you just chose not to say hi to, that was the person who needed your eye contact, needed your smile, needed your handshake, needed a short conversation, needed you to show up for them. And as soon as we start to see ourselves that way confidently, we start to see ourselves as servants of people through interaction, servants of people through connection. Man, it changes everything. Suddenly that smile, that handshake, that hello to a stranger, or that vulnerable ask of a friend in an acquaintance that you've seen a few times at your kids' sports games, and you vulnerably ask, hey, do you want to go grab a drink together? You want to grab a cup of coffee together? Suddenly that means more. It's not about you anymore. It's about them as well. It's about the way you can show up and serve people.
Let's go there a little bit further. Your second TED Talk is called "When We Gather, We Matter," right?
Yeah.
And your life's work has been getting groups together. Fraternities. Now you're in this Between project, in the faith world. And so, I'm thinking through, like, there's a listener here that's saying, well, I'm an introvert, and that they identify with being an introvert, and it's just easier for them to kind of just like hang out by themselves and not talk to anybody. So how do you take someone like that? And how do you, in a business sense, get people to come together and matter when they gather?
I love that. The way you framed that question was wonderful. I'm an introvert. Let's start with a confession to you and to God above. I am an introvert. Put me in a group situation and I don't want to be there. Let's start. You remember earlier how I said, oh no, this was before we started recording. You were commenting on my headshot and you were saying, oh, I think I recognize that place. It's nearby here. And I said, yes, that was at a wedding. My wife and I were at a wedding. And it was a cool setting, like with some cool red rocks in the background. And I said, honey, let's go do a photo shoot. You want to know the truth? The truth is, let's go do a photo shoot so I don't have to mingle with these strangers during the cocktail hour before I am an introvert. I really am. And a lot of people say, well, aren't you a professional speaker? How could you be an introvert? Well, who do you think I'm listening to the whole time I'm speaking? Myself. It's like I'm in a little closet all by myself. It's great. I don't have to care about any. No, that's not right. Anyway, I'm an introvert. That is very, very true. And just because I don't get energy from large group situations doesn't give me an excuse to not be a social human. As it turns out, this is my problem with the introvert sort of. There's been a lot of people writing on being an introvert, and it's all pretty good stuff, except that I think people have taken that label of being an introvert and used it as an excuse for underperformance. They've used it as an excuse to not say hello to their neighbor. They've used it as an excuse to not be a good coworker, honestly. And I'm not okay with that. In fact, I believe deeply that our faith, even, I'll go there. So you brought up that I'm doing this Between project. Our faith is a social experience. Now, I have had incredibly powerful, mystical, magical faith experiences alone, solitary faith experiences. I have. I've prayed by myself in ways that I've just had incredible experiences. And I'm a believer, and this is controversial. I'm a believer that none of that really matters except in the way that I put it into practice in my life, except in the way that I show up for other human beings. I believe that my faith tells me that my job is to be a human, is to show up lovingly with people, is to treat others as though, right? Like that is the point. Jesus had two great commandments, right? Love the Lord your God and then love other people. That's it. Like that was the thesis statement that he was showing up with, man. Like that's it. And so for me, what we believe is only matters as much as we put it into action in the way that we interact with other people. So this Between project is all about the way we fill the space between ourselves and other people is who we are. The way we fill the space between ourselves and other people is the only way our faith comes to life in the world, the only way we manifest our deepest beliefs. And part of the reason I love that is because you can bring your own faith. You can bring your own beliefs. By the way, your understanding of faith and my understanding of faith is decidedly different, I'm sure. And we're similar folks, right? Now spread it across 8 billion people around a globe. And you got lots of different ways of understanding faith. And I believe the same thing is true about all of them. All of the world's great religions all point us to love each other, all point us to fill the space between ourselves and other people with our divine gifts of being a loving human. No, I started, Stu, I forget what you asked me, but man, maybe it was
Preach, brother.
around there.
Preach. I love it.
That was awesome, man. I love that. And I think one of my favorite parts, and, Stu and I always talk about the book of James because it's so challenging, because he talks about, hey, dude, faith without works is dead, right? And it's not twisting the gospel, be like, okay, I get into heaven through good works. No, dude, he's just saying that the manifestation, as you just highlight, the manifestation of your faith is through action. And those actions are based, bring it back to the two primary commandments are to love your God and love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? And so when you actually live that, dude, like those things sound so simple, and it is so difficult to get past our own biases, our own opinions, that in and of itself, so difficult to actually to initiate that love, to be the light, to be the salt, to be this person, right? To be these things is a very difficult thing because you're fighting so many internal and external pressures that don't want you to do that. And some of the most powerful ones are the internal ones. And so I tell you, man, it is, I love that. That is absolutely beautiful. And I want to share in front of you guys and God, I also am an introvert. I'm just kidding.
No, you're not.
I don't know if anybody's gonna believe that.
That's
yeah,
a hard no.
Yeah. I'm a wannabe. I'm gonna want to be introvert.
No, you're not.
No, that's not true either. I shouldn't lie. Follow up a faith statement with a lie. But I'll tell you, man, it's so powerful. Now I encourage everybody to go to check out Matt's stuff, right? Check out the TED Talks, check out the Between project, check out, everything you do is like, it's so, I love the impact. I love the thought behind it. I love the intentionality and the action piece of it, right? The action piece of it is so critical because so many of us get stuck in the analysis. So many of us get stuck in well, that'd be really cool. And we don't just do it. We don't just do it.
Yeah. This is what I love about the work that you guys are doing. You are entirely about action. You are entirely, even earlier, you were like, yeah, I'll give people grace, but I'm also going to hold them accountable, right? Like once you know, you got to take action, right? Once you know, you got to take action. I think that is something that has inspired me. Like even, let's debate, let's not actually, but let's say we debate a hot political topic right now, like neat, cool debate. Get in the weeds of that topic and you're going to find that it's a lot more complicated than your hot take. Get in the weeds of that topic and you're going to find that your certainty is challenged immediately when you see a human being up close who is dealing with the challenge of that topic, right? Any of them. And no matter what side you're on of anything, you take action, you show up in the middle of it. I'll tell you what you're going to find out. It's a lot more complicated and there is probably only one way through it. With each other, lovingly. That is the only real way through it.
It's powerful. That's powerful.
Well, as expected, we could have. We probably can go another hour.
Yeah, I don't really want to stop. We have a meeting pressing here in 30 minutes. I don't want to stop. But
speaking of action,
we're gonna have you come back.
Yeah, we'll have to do part two. You said something that I think is really good, and it leaves this episode with some action that our listeners can take. And you said handshakes lead to connections, Connections lead to relationships. Relationships lead to collaborations. Collaborations lead to organizations, and organizations can change the world. So step one in that is give a handshake. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
Man, I really believe that. I really do. I think our ability to connect determines our ability to gather together, and our ability to gather together determines our ability to impact the world. I think you guys know that our old Margaret Mead quote that is, used in every leadership program you've ever been to or whatever, but right, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. At the end of that quote, she says, the only thing that has ever made the world any better is when we have gotten a group of people together to do something about it. Everybody always likes the first part of the quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens, that always makes us feel good. I'm a committed citizen. And sure. Then, like at the end of that, she buries like a hammer. She says, the only thing that's ever made the world better is when we've reached out our hand and shaken a hand, introduced ourselves to somebody new, built a relationship, brought them in to a group of people who want to make the world a little better, who want to do something about it, and done something. Like, that's it. That's it. That's the only pathway that there is.
Dude, it reminds me, I don't know why, when you said that quote, it also brought up a quote that I love, and Edmund Burke quote, that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is that good men do nothing. Right. And it's that has always really stuck with me, because you're not, by doing nothing, you're still making a choice. And that choice, that action, doing nothing is still an action, right? You're doing nothing. And so that enables that space to be filled by other. And so I just love, I love that quote. I love how when you take quotes to their full extent, there's usually some power in it that we like to cut off, wives, submit to your husbands. That's one of my favorites. Wives, submit to your husbands. And then, I love the question, what men, what does it say after that? Let's read that.
Keep reading. Keep reading. That's right.
Keep reading. Just one more sentence, just keep reading. And you're going to start getting into something very deep that we're called to do and challenged to love our wives as you love yourselves. Right. And that's a big challenge, but I love it. There's a couple action items I want to highlight that you also said. I frame this slightly differently, but we should just go into conversations and go into our thoughts and go into our assumptions and our opinions, assuming that we're about 90% wrong, right? 90% of the time we're wrong. We should absolutely just go in, because it's true. I mean, it just is true. As you dig into it, you're like, my opinion there was
probably 99% for you.
99 for me, it's 100%, 99%. It's 100%, 99%. 60% of the time it works every time. And so I think assuming that has been very powerful, for me at least. A very powerful assumption is when I go into a conversation to be like, I tell myself that, because I have a very strong need to be right, and it's been a crutch my entire life. It's been something that has been a barrier to relationship. So assume you're wrong. And I loved how you highlighted, take a look at the other side. Like, I literally will not dive into a conversation anymore if the topic we're going to talk about, that person hasn't at least done some level of work. And it's not because I think I'm better or worse, or I won't dive in if I haven't done the work. I'll just say, hey man, I've not done the work, right? This is not gonna be a great conversation because I've just not read that book. I am not fluent in this topic. But when people want to debate the Bible and they've never read it, like, that's one where I'm like, hey dude, no-go criteria. Like, I'm happy to talk about the Bible anytime, but you've never read it. So what are we gonna talk about? Like, this is just not a great conversation. But we do that all the time. And so when you talk about looking at the other side, not only are you missing out by not looking at it, potentially educating yourself and maybe changing your perspective, but you're just living in your own sound chamber. It's just this repeated self-validating thing, and really there's no growth in that. And to me, that's kind of a sad existence. So 2 action items: assume you're wrong, go into conversations that way, and look at the other side. It's not going to kill you. I promise it's not going to kill you.
Yeah. It's lonely in that echo chamber, man. It's lonely in that echo chamber.
It is.
I love it.
You're just there with yourself. Hey dude, we are and one shout out to Megan as well. Megan is your wife. She may be one of the most funny people I've ever met in my entire life. Eric and I absolutely adore her. She is hilarious. So we might have to get her on just to school us and also bring lots of joy and laughter. But man, I just want to thank you and again, I just want to applaud your effort to be so focused, to be so dedicated to understanding, asking meaningful questions. Your curiosity is something that has literally caused you to build businesses around asking great questions, building relationship, bringing people together. And dude, it's such a beautiful thing, man. I honestly believe that you will not, you're just simply not going to realize the extent of your influence, your impact until you get to heaven. Because there's guys, there's kids you've coached, there's college dudes out there that I guarantee you their lives have been impacted forever. And they just don't have, the confidence, or maybe don't remember your name to reach out and say, hey man, this guy really impacted me. So I just want to thank you for that and acknowledge you for that.
Thanks, man. It means a lot.
Matt, where do we send people? Where can people find more about you? We're going to put your TED Talks on our show notes, but where do we send people that want to hear more about you?
Yeah, there's lots of things. The number one thing I think I'd encourage people to try, you can try it. There's not a lot of commitment. We don't ask for money. There's nothing like that. The easiest thing you could do is go to between.church and fill out the form. You basically sign yourself up for an email list, become part of our global digital bring your own beliefs community. Again, between.church. We got people, by the way, at Between on every continent except Antarctica right now. So I'm fine. If you guys know anybody in Antarctica,
yeah, you guys aren't winning. Then you're clearly not winning if you don't have the Antarcticans.
This is. I feel like a failure. That's exactly was my point on that, David. Yeah.
Well, all you Antarcticans out there, go sign up.
All of our Antarctican listeners,
friends,
get on.
I don't know if
church.
I think they're down in like the 0.2% data column on our.
Yeah,
our
maybe
listeners.
I just got to dig deeper. You guys too. Yeah,
we'll get there.
To be clear, I wasn't saying like we already have enough people from every continent. I was just saying anyway. Yeah, I appreciate the really aiming your marketing at Antarcticans. Thanks.
This has been a fun conversation, man. We will have to do part 2. I can't wait to go grab a coffee to go on a hike. Next time, invite me to go on a hike. I'd appreciate it. So
it's probably no go.
Oh,
it's probably a no go.
Dave said
Matt and I are
hang with us.
Yeah. Matt and I are developing our relationship to get to that love point where it just flows. And I feel like you might be an impediment to that, Stuart.
Hey, guys and gals, reach out to Matt. We'll put all the links to his businesses in the show notes. And hey, share this, right? Share this episode, tell somebody about it, and go take those action steps that we gave. Go give a handshake. Assume that you possibly could be wrong, right? And maybe think a little bit differently and be curious. It might just change the world. Go fill a storehouse.
Make it a great day, friends. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Stuart, I love you.
I love you too, buddy. See ya.
I told you it was an awesome episode and so much fun. And if you're leaving it without action items, then I would suggest you're wrong. There's things that we can do, simple steps. And one of them is maybe not clearly visible, but just the assumption that, hey, I might not know everything is a great place to start. It's a beautiful place to go into a conversation. And the curiosity, the questions that you could come up with are guaranteed to enrich your life, assuming you're listening to the answers and you're going in it with a true heart of learning. Just such a powerful episode, man. I really, really appreciate Matt. Loved this time. Can't wait to get on the mountains with him and just spend more time in just trying to figure out how to ask better questions, learn new things, and ultimately be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better friend, be a better man of God.
Yeah, man. There's one huge action step that I'm going to take after this conversation that we have with him. I'm going to ask Matt if he wants to be my best friend.
Yeah. And I have a sense of what his answer is going to be. And I think it's going to be the same answer as the other 35 dudes that you asked to be your best friend. Like we're just stuck together, man. Like
we're on 235 episodes by now. But I think
it's a lot of dudes.
Matt could be the one. Matt, if you're listening to this, hey, I'm a really good best friend. So let's hang out a little bit more.
Matt, questionable on how good of a best friend, and hopefully you do not turn down our request for part 2 of this episode because Stu is creeping you out.
Hey, but on a serious note, the stuff that he talks about, like this idea of gathering together and building community and building a tribe, like it's real, and we've experienced it. We've felt this magic happen in our retreats, the Kinetic Man retreats. In the mastermind, men coming together, being vulnerable, having meaningful relationships, telling each other we love you, like it's awesome. And we're starting another group in September. House 3's coming. The application is now open. You can go to our website and hit the join now button and apply. And our next retreat is happening at the end of September. More details on that will be coming soon as well. So take action. Join a tribe, and become better men. Do it.
Men who tell each other they love each other is different. And that's what we strive for. Be different, be better, be kinetic, giddy up.
Giddy up.
See you there. Thank you, friends, for listening to Filling the Storehouse. If you are growth-minded, community-focused, and willing to take uncommon action to redefine success and live an abundant life, visit our website at www.storehouse310.com to see all the ways we can connect.
Yeah, on our website, you can find information on everything we're doing, like joining our meetup page to get the details on our webinars and our local Thursday gatherings here in Colorado. From our site, you can also find information on and sign up for our next retreat. Finally, we always appreciate your love and support. Please share this episode and go rate us on your podcast player of choice.
Thank you again. Now go fill the storehouse.